Alright, hello to the first ever rant that I'm posting on this channel, and a pretty apt and timely rant because it is election season, and what I want to be talking about today is elections. So, I guess this kind of stemmed from the fact that I've been trying to take the elections a bit more seriously, mainly because this year I can vote, and I told myself that I would vote, that I would think about who to vote for more seriously when the time actually came to vote. So I'm part of the West Coast Jurong GRC, and the representatives are from the PSP. The opposition is from the PSP, and that would be Tan Cheng Bock, Leong Man Wai, and Hazel Phua. So what I want to talk about today is actually the sort of frustration that came along with the realization that I guess it's hard to know who to vote for. Seriously, it's hard to know whose policies actually make sense in the grand scheme of things, and well, who you would want in parliament. So I told myself I wouldn't want to vote for the opposition simply because it would add more voices, right? It's true that having a diversity of voices is good in parliament, but you don't want unconstructive voices. You don't want people wasting other people's time giving useless input and not driving the conversation forward. You want good opposition to hold up a mirror to the ruling party to say, look, this is where you are blindsided and whatnot, right? So I tried my best to take a look at the manifesto, to take a look at some of the issues that they were arguing for and see whether it was sound, see whether it made sense. But the more I dug into it, the more I realized understanding this is hard work. It really is. It's such a chore to be able to, first of all, read through the manifestos of people that you have to choose between. Second of all, understand the situation, right? Understand the thing that's been argued, whether it's housing, whether it's cost of living. Understand that situation, understand their solutions to it, and then the implications for it, right? And then not only do you have to know that, you have to know what the opposition says, because I'm obviously not smart enough to think of the counter arguments myself. So I got to hear what the opposing side has to say about their policy, right? And then on top of all that, you have the counter arguments to that. So I have to go through all of these things with the hope of just being able to grasp the context of the situation. And the thing is, I'm not an expert, right? Even though I have studied maybe like IB level economics, and have a rough understanding of how certain things impact the economy, I don't nearly have as much knowledge as the experts, those people that dedicate their whole lives to it. And I don't have enough interdisciplinary knowledge to know what it impacts across a societal scale, right? So on my end, I don't know shit, right? And I cannot make a fully 100% informed decision about whether somebody's policies are sound or not. But what it dawned on me was that everyone else is like this too, right? I dare say that there's only about 5% of people who genuinely know what they're talking about when it comes to policy, right? 5% of people who know the full extent of the situation and can comment constructively and knowledgeably on it. And because of that, it means that 95% of the people are casting a vote based off of nonsense, right? Of course, you could accidentally vote for the right answer, let's say. But the fact is, nobody actually knows what's going on, right? You're either repeating talking points from certain people, relying on heuristics like, oh, more people in parliament is better, or this guy is more charismatic and therefore he's better, that kind of thing. So I've realized that nobody has the time, the effort, the expertise to be able to vote properly. So at the end of the day, it really does just go over our heads. And this leads me to the next part about the argument that was going on regarding, I think it was political ignorance. Yeah, so there was a lot of discourse online about how you need to be responsible, be serious about the democracy that we have, because it is your duty, right, to be able to know who you're voting for, and vote wisely, right? You don't want people who are just voting willy-nilly. But as much as I agree with the point that you have a duty, an obligation even, because you live in a democracy, to be serious and take it seriously, who you're voting for, it is also the case that it's quite hopeless for the common man who's voting, right, to be able to do their own research amidst all the troubles that they have in their life, and they may not even reach a good or right conclusion, right? And I'm not saying it's anyone's fault. When I try my best, I feel the lack of knowledge. I feel the insufficiency of the depth of my expertise to be able to decide on what is right. So if that's the case for almost everyone, then a rather cynical view would just be that when people try their best, it will never be enough. And so, what's the point, right? But that's kind of a thing that I'm wrestling with, because I don't want to throw away the idea that you have a personal responsibility to vote seriously. So this is related to a conversation in the US that happened recently, regarding the role of expertise and institutions in society, right? So what happened was that Douglas Murray went on a Joe Rogan podcast with Dave Smith and called them out essentially for not being responsible on who they platformed, right? So Joe Rogan is the king of podcasts in the US, maybe possibly in the world. And Douglas Murray was arguing that even though he is alternative media, giving voices to what the mainstream media wouldn't platform, he still has a responsibility to make sure that there is accountability with who he platforms, right? And that means not just giving free rein to conspiracy theorists and anyone who wants to say anything, right? There has to be checks and balances by proper professionals who have proper expertise and can comment constructively and accurately on what they're saying. And there was pushback on that because the whole alternative media community kind of glorifies the free marketplace of ideas, right? That it cannot possibly go wrong for everyone and anyone to be able to say whatever they wanted at any time. And yet, there is a need for expert voices because not everyone knows what they're talking about, right? Our society is so complex and knowledge runs so deep that you would have to dedicate your whole life just to be able to properly understand a certain field or discipline. And if we, don't recognize that, then you're going to have people making very uninformed decisions, uninformed thoughts, and then spreading those horrendous ideas all over the place. So again, I'm not saying that, you should deplatform people or censor people, but there needs to be a form of trust in expertise, trust in institutions, right? That's the only way a society can function. And everybody knows this, right? Everybody to some extent relies on third-party information. You don't source for information directly about whether your computer works or whether the train works, right? Or whether the water you drink is safe or not, right? You have to rely on expertise because you know that some people know what they're doing better than you. So and that's how society is built. That's how society works. So all of this is related because I've started to think about whether democracies are flawed for this reason, that the general population, the large majority of the population, doesn't really have much expertise and doesn't know the right amount of information to be able to make a proper judgment. And so, I'm not saying we should remove their votes, because that would be removing my right to vote. But isn't it strange that we allow the masses to be swayed by stuff that is more salient in our mind than the actual policies that are behind it, right? We can try our best, but at the end of the day, the number of people that actually really know enough to be having a proper decision is very little. And in the end, all we end up getting swayed by is things like how well the politician is speaking, right? What kind of more salient things they're talking about, like identity politics, like culture, right? That's why the US kind of degenerated into something like that, right? Identity politics. We default to heuristics like we should put more people in parliament because it's more voices, because that's just better, or the other way around, which is that the current government did it well, so they must be all right, right? So yeah, it's just a small little rant about elections, I guess. So let me know what you think in the comments. But yeah, thanks for watching my first ever rant. I'll see you around. Bye bye.